how's it going? So, as some of you may know, I've had the immense pleasure of being appointed the touring guitarist for the Pineapple Thief for their upcoming Dissolution tour starting, I want to say, 15th of September in Paris. And I just wanted to make this video to share some tips with you and some lessons that I learned along the way of preparing for this tour. This really is my first sort of large-scale touring gig. So it's been a great pleasure getting into this music. You know, those guys have written some of my favorite music ever. So having the opportunity to play it live is a really wonderful thing for me. So yeah, so this is, I guess, some of the tips and some lessons again I've picked up along the way of preparing towards this gig. Okay, enjoy. Well, the first thing is you gotta listen to the music, and by listening I mean, you know, not sitting on the cell phone or being on YouTube while the music is playing on the background. You know, you gotta really dig deep into the music, get into the point where you've absorbed it almost as much as the guys who wrote it. Now, thankfully, for the older stuff that we'll be performing, you know, I already know a lot of the songs just because I was a fan before playing with those guys. But I also had the pleasure of getting the new record in advance, which sounds awesome. So, you know, much of the preparation was literally sitting down and just listening to the record like a good, I want to say, 20-30 times each track before even attempting to play it. So that's definitely a big thing. And again, this is not a reading gig. Not that I would do very well in a reading gig. This is a gig where you have to go out and play the songs as if you wrote them. You know, you have to be totally immersed into the experience. So listening to the record and absorbing, internalizing the music is definitely a very important thing. Well, another thing that I like to do you know, is to just take notes on specific parts of songs. There are certain parts that I tend to absorb more easily, and other parts that I need to isolate and work on. So much of what I did was to literally make a folder of every track and write down the things about the track that I found most challenging, and really fixating on them. You know, much like I recommend my students when it comes to learning something. Well, if you have a piece, right, a 4 or 5 minute piece you want to learn, and you just have trouble between, let's say, bar 50 to bar 75, well, there's no point playing the piece again and again. You want to tackle the problem, and once you've dealt with it, then you can move on. So yeah, much of the preparation was isolating the parts that I found more challenging and just looping them again and again and again. To the point where I could just kind of play them again, like as if I was the guy who wrote them, you know, which is the point where you want to be in that sort of gig. So yeah, definitely very important. You know, it does take a mental weight off just writing the parts that give you a hard time down, and then just tackling them individually. Now, another thing that was very interesting in this gig is the role of the electric guitar. Many songs are very full on, you know, riffs. There's going to be solos, and you know, but also there's a lot of parts where I'm providing, let's say, texture, and this is something very interesting that I hadn't really explored before. So actually acquiring a bunch of new gear was very helpful. I bought the Helix Lt, which is just a more compact edition of the bigger pedal, and I've been very happy with it. It's been really nice to just sitting down and being able to very easily program the right sounds for every song. And you know, from my perspective as a musician and a songwriter and guitar player, it's been just really interesting thinking of that extra layer. Because so far, guitar for me, I mean, yeah, I've done a fair amount of layering for my own record that will see the light of day, I'm assuming sometime in 2019. But you know, most of my stuff have been pretty sort of straightforward. It's been clean sound, crunch, heavier tone, and then maybe some slight reverby and stuff with delay. But you know, I've never had to think so much about guitar as more of a texture, you know, more of an ambience, and that was a big you know, big creative and learning experience for me. It's just really helpful that we have the technology now that enables us to do it fairly easily, you know. Well, another big deal is the guitars, right? So there's a fair amount of variety of tracks on the set, and there's some more you know, stuff that require more of a twangy sound, and I think I'll be predominantly using the Reverend for that kind of stuff. There's more straight ahead rock stuff, which, you know, the GNL, again, it's kind of a super Strat, so it's got hot rails, so it's going to have fat enough and driven enough the sound for that kind of material. And then there's some stuff that would require a 7-string, which is a first for me. I was never really a 7-string guy. Nothing against them, just never happened to play them. So it's been actually great to find this opportunity to actually explore playing a 7-string, because I guess it's also an extra writing tool, right? But yeah, so that's really important, having the correct, well, all the appropriate guitars for, you know, for the set, because you want to do the, you know, people go to a gig and they want to kind of hear, they want to get the excitement of it being live, and maybe you add a thing or two that keep things exciting, but they also want it to sound, I guess, similar to a record. And like gardening 24/7 around here. So yeah, that's really important to have the correct instruments for the gig. And finally, it's the performance aspect. You know, you gotta make sure that you know the song so well that once you go on stage, you can just forget about the mechanics and just be immersed into the experience. Because that will make everybody just feel better. You know, first of all, the band, you know, you don't want to seem like you're trying too hard. And also the audience, you know, people can tell if you're like sort of trying to float above water, or if you're just so into it and you're just in that moment. So for me, a big part of the preparation is just, again, isolating much of the more, I guess, technical parts, and just make sure that I can comfortably play them, you know, stood up, doing backflips and all that, and, you know, not looking like I'm kind of struggling to keep my head above water, because that's very important. So I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I sure hope I see many of you on the road. I have attached some information on the link below with regards to all the dates. There's also a second leg in 2019, so there's some additional dates there. So yeah, make sure you keep your eyes fixed, and if you come see any of the gigs, come say hello. Alright? Rock and roll.